Now, Nico Hulkenberg's move to Audi has started a cascade of actions that is set to change the entire landscape of Formula 1 in the foreseeable future, and it seems like we're going to see some massive changes in the following weeks from other teams as well. But with Nico signing a long-term contract with Audi, what does this mean for the rest of the drivers who are affected by this signature, like Sainz and Bearman? And more importantly, is this adding more pressure on Sainz to make his decision faster than anticipated, after Mercedes' latest statements towards Verstappen? It goes without saying that Hulkenberg's move to Audi was not really a surprise, but a long-awaited announcement that was just confirmed by both sides. However, it's starting a chain reaction in the long brewing silly season that we're about to see explode in the next couple of weeks. Right now, the most important thing is that the experienced German driver will definitely reunite with the team that he was part of in 2013. And considering that he had a massive impact on Haas's development and brought 4 out of the 5 points the American squad has in 2024, this could be a negative indicator of the future of Haas, a team that will now rely heavily on the experience of Kevin Magnussen, but that doesn't mean they're not ready for changes. Quite the contrary, it seems like a rookie is set to replace Hulkenberg from 2025 onwards, and it was long rumoured after the amazing debut in Jeddah that Audi Bearman belongs in Formula 1, and it's only a matter of time before he gets a seat in one of the Ferrari affiliated teams. Even though Vasseur was firm when it comes to Bearman's future with the Maranello team or in the overall bigger picture in the sport, saying that it's out of his hands, the move from Hulkenberg has opened up a spot that's hard to believe that somebody else will inherit. What's even more important is to see how Bearman will act in Formula 2 in the current season, because right now the situation is quite difficult. He only has a couple of points behind his name, and Prema Racing did not start the season as expected. That, however, is partly due to the amazing debut he had with Ferrari in Jeddah, a weekend in which he was supposed to start the race from pole position and was recruited by the Maranello team, a move that literally changed his career. Many experts try to downplay his performance by saying that he drove the second fastest car on the grid, so P7 with it is not really a massive achievement. But if you add the fact that he barely had any experience with an F1 car, is 18 years old, and kept Norris and Hamilton at bay in the ending stages of the race, it's definitely a great achievement for his CV. If Haas are putting Bearman next to Magnussen, it would be a massive test for the Dane as well, who is running out of contract at the end of the 2024 season. Obviously, the team has undergone some massive changes in the previous period, and the most important one is the change of leadership, where Steiner was replaced with Komatsu. But be that as it may, Haas could very well prepare for a scenario in which they will return to their roots, which is hire 2 rookie drivers and see where their youth and ambition to prove themselves will be enough to push them in the midfield. That's up to the American squad to answer, but apart from them, there are lots of other moving pieces that have been kind of forced to make their moves sooner rather than later, and the first one is Carlos Sainz. The Spaniard has been heavily related to Audi ever since the team announced its arrival, but due to the complexity of the current situation with Mercedes as well as Red Bull, it goes without saying that he has much more attractive options to race at the front rather than waste his prime time in the back until 2028, when Audi plans to be competitive. As of now, what's very interesting is that Mercedes are planning on having a meeting with Verstappen after the Miami GP, where they're ready to offer the Dutchman around 150 million per year, as well as the liberty to bring whoever he feels would be the best fit along with his services, of course with the exception of Adrian Newey, who will likely have to wait a couple of years before he can influence the design of another car other than Red Bull's. Sainz would be smart to wait a little bit longer to decide about his future, but Audi doesn't plan on playing games for a longer period of time. The German squad is now actively pushing towards a Spanish driver making a decision sooner rather than later, mostly because they want to fix the driver's lineup issue as fast as possible and bring the best possible pairing from 2025 onwards. The situation is loud and clear. The priority lies in Sainz and Hulkenberg, and now that one of the drivers is signed, it has been reported that Audi will give a little bit of freedom to Sainz because they've achieved one of their ultimate goals. But that doesn't mean they're going to stop here. It's very likely they will negotiate with Bottas, who's been a bit in the shadow of the sport since his departure from Mercedes, one that saw him drop to the back of the grid and barely fight for any points. But then again, the 2024 season will be a fight to survive between Bottas and Zhou, because right now, one of them is definitely without a seat from 2025 onwards. And judging by the performance of both athletes, that's very likely to be the Chinese driver, who although has youth on his side, will be be collateral damage and will very unlikely find a seat if it's not with Sauber. Fighting at the back and barely for any scrap points is a likely scenario with which Sainz will have to deal from 2025 onwards. And be that as it may, the situation is loud and clear. If he joins Sauber, it will be to fight around the midfield from 2026 onwards. And once the team understands the rules of the new regulations, which is a process they estimated will take around 3 years, then they'll be fighting for race wins in 2028, which is a period that Sainz will be very well past his prime, around the 34th year of his life. Contrary to that, he could be signing a contract with Mercedes from 2025 onwards, but the trick is in Mercedes' priorities. They have a young protege in Kimi Antonelli that they want to push forward from 2026 onwards, and there is only one condition under which they would delay the development path of the Italian driver, and that is if Verstappen signs a contract with Mercedes from 2025 onwards. The money's not the problem. We all know Mercedes would be wasting every penny they have in order to secure the services of the 3-time world champion. But Wolff himself said that a driver of Verstappen's caliber needs to be shown a real project and a promising future within the team. Because anybody who would believe that Verstappen would remain with Red Bull just because of the performance of the team is a fool. When talking about the future of Verstappen in Mercedes, something that could very well ruin the opportunity for Sainz to join one of the 2 competitive teams that are currently in the mix for his future, Wolff said, "There are so many factors that play a role in a driver joining, and clearly, when you look at it from the most rational point of view, you can say it's the quickest car in the hands of the quickest driver. But I don't think that's the only reason you stay where you are. Maybe there are some more depths, so some people consider other factors too, and I think Max has that." This, however, opens up a seat for Sainz in Red Bull, and if Verstappen is to commit to a shocking move to Mercedes, it would inevitably open up the landscape for Sainz to compete up at the front with Sergio Perez. That is, if the Austrian squad decides to keep the Mexican driver, which would definitely be a huge question mark because the competition would be shifted massively towards Mercedes. And to put your future in the hands of the driver, who's been heavily underperforming compared to his teammate, is definitely not something Red Bull would be willing to do. Sainz, on the other hand, would bring a much closer performance to Verstappen, but obviously it's not going to be what Verstappen is currently bringing week in and week out. So with this in mind, there are lots of questions that need to be answered on this front, and the most important one is, who ends where at the end of the storm? So, what do you think about all the sides involved after Hulkenberg's move that started the entire silly season? And where do you think drivers like Sainz and Bottas will end? Let us know in the comments down below.